So, I think most people are aware at this point about the New York Times article. It's actually a podcast, not an article, but it's via the New York Times. It's a podcast about Jungkook and the English language in K-pop, hosted by Jon Caramanica with guest Kara. It is through the New York Times, but seemingly you can listen to it for free. It's on Google if you just search the title of this article, and that's how I was able to listen to it, and I didn't have to sign up or anything. I just finished it, and it is a little interesting, very interesting. Right away, I love how John refers to Jungkook as Cook, like as if that's his last name, as journalists typically do when they're writing. He'd say things like Cook, as I'm sure you're aware, is a member of BTS. Like that was right at the beginning of the podcast too, like entirely representative of where this conversation was headed. And before I begin or start talking about this, I don't necessarily want to become what John and Kara were talking about in terms of crazy K-pop stans, but this kind of rhetoric it's, in my opinion, dangerous. It's certainly frustrating for K-pop fans, and it's borderline discriminatory. And I think we deserve to be able to have a conversation about this without being called deranged K-pop stans or Koreaboos for having an opposing opinion. I'm not interested in attacking John or Kara, but rather the rhetoric that was entertained with this podcast episode. So, at the start of the podcast, John laid out everything for the listener to hear. He made reference to Jungkook's album and other K-pop groups singing in English as a means of gaining Western approval or Western validation. The rest of the podcast followed the trajectory of K-pop from 2NE1 and Big Bang to BTS's 3 consecutive #1 hits in the West. The main idea of this discussion seemed to be that John and Kara seem to think BTS's Western promotion era compromised their identity as a group and somehow poses a threat to the concept of K-pop as a whole. Jungkook's album Golden is treated as a cornerstone moment in this westernization process, as the sound of the songs, as if you've listened to the album, are very reflective of what's popular in Western music, and the album is, of course, entirely in English. My central question after all of this is, why can't Jungkook do this? Why can't he break into the West with English songs? Why can't BTS break into the West with English songs? Why is it a problem? I know some people may say in response to that it isn't a problem, but then why are we bringing this up? Why are we talking about it and questioning the integrity of K-pop as a result of this? I think a good area where we can cover a lot of groundwork in this discussion is the Japanese music market. BTS, as well as virtually every other K-pop group in the industry, changes the style of their music for the Japanese market. It's not just that they're singing in the Japanese language. No, the songs themselves are produced and made in likeness to what's popular in Japan. It's not intended to be billed as K-pop. It's supposed to emulate J-pop because there is an understanding that K-pop songs or K-pop sounding songs do have a difficulty performing well in Japan. And almost nobody has a problem with this. There aren't any think pieces posted about this practice that K-pop groups, in their efforts to appeal to the Japanese market, are losing the essence of what makes them K-pop. The music videos, the styling are oftentimes completely changed to fit the standards of the Japanese market. It's very clean. It's very, the color white is incorporated as much as possible to showcase a clean and fresh look. Even for the most edgy groups in K-pop, most of them conform to this convention. For most K-pop groups, it's a complete visual and sonic overhaul for them as a group. So, with that in mind, this is the same exact thing that Jungkook's Golden album does, but this time it's in the West, and for some reason, it's a problem when it's in the West. Like, we now have to talk about the integrity of K-pop if it's going to be lost forever if Jungkook decides to promote in the West. Butter by BTS was mentioned as a, quote, breaking point in BTS's discography, where John mentioned that this is when the group started to become unrecognizable to him, and here's my thing about this. I would argue that if Butter absolutely tanked in the West and was sitting at maybe 18 million streams on Spotify today, I don't think we would be having this conversation. We wouldn't be identifying this song as a, quote, breaking point for BTS. The thing that seems to cause this to be a breaking point, to be a problem worth mentioning, is that the song was successful. Same with Jungkook. If Seven and Golden didn't perform that well, I really don't think we would be talking about this. I think the album, if it wasn't successful, would be praised in some ways. Am I crazy for thinking that? I really suspect the problem here is that some people perceive K-pop artists as not real artists, right? Or somehow a different kind of musician that should not be allowed to break into the West. Like K-pop groups, them diverting from the hallmark conventions of K-pop is something to be worried about. I guess I just don't understand why this is the case. And from my perspective, Jungkook and BTS shifting their musical style to market towards the West does not threaten the integrity of K-pop in any way. I'm not accusing Jon or Kara of thinking these ways. Jon actually said multiple times that he thinks it's significant that Jungkook is the most successful and popular act in Western pop music right now. With the way that Jon and Kara were talking about this, it seems like there is an understanding that idols in the K-pop industry cannot, or maybe should not, be crossing into the Western market so as to preserve the concept of K-pop, that them appealing to a non-East Asian market is somehow the death of this genre. I know it's not technically a genre, but it's the death of K-pop, right? They didn't really ever explain this more other than K-pop is somehow being compromised by this happening. They spoke about 2NE1 and Big Bang and how their success in the West didn't come with a compromise to K-pop's maximalist aesthetic. But what about Dr. Pepper by CL with Riff Raff? What about Lifted by CL, right? I'm really having trouble understanding the concern about this or where it's coming from. K-pop is an industry that focuses on the development of idols, yes, but that doesn't mean Korean people can't be artists, right? Again, I'm not accusing Jon or Kara specifically of thinking this, but there seems to be an understanding that any person of Korean descent who makes music is somehow inherently K-pop. I think the real problem here is that K-pop is made out to be a monolith. All K-pop groups must think and behave in the same way, and so if BTS is marketing towards the West, that means K-pop is now doing so as well. Dynamite was 3 years ago now, and despite its massive, massive success, the landscape of K-pop hasn't really changed that wildly. Yes, K-pop groups do promote in the West now, but the integrity of K-pop's charm isn't going anywhere from my perspective. I think a good example of this is aespa, who just released the English single Better Things, and then the very next release after that was Drama. How about Blackpink with Pink Venom and even Shutdown? These groups, like them, don't seem to be wholly compromising their identity to promote in the West, right? There's also this notion when talking about BTS's advancements into the Western market that they somehow have to compromise themselves as a group. Again, the two hosts of the podcast remarked Butter as some kind of turning point where BTS lost the plot. And to some extent, I think they are onto something where I would say BTS's fanbase did waver a bit. Like the K-pop focused fanbase wavered during the Butter Dynamite Permission to Dance era. Not everyone is going to like everything their favorite artist releases, but the general sentiment about these releases is that BTS had transformed into something unrecognizable, that this push into the Western market was now going to be their artistic identity now and forever, and K-pop and BTS as we knew them somehow dies with it, right? Personally, I think all of this is a non-issue. The advent of HYBE's exponential growth may make it seem like Westernization is the future of K-pop, but I'd argue that there will never be an absent market for traditional K-pop in all its maximalism charms. I think that's why we do have discussions like this, right? Where people are so concerned over the integrity of K-pop becoming lost somewhere in the process. There is a sizable market for K-pop. So, from my perspective, and the way that I see it, if Jungkook and BTS don't fill that market, somebody else will. Because there is a significant audience for that style of music. There is money to be earned in this market. It seems like there always will be. So, yeah, I don't really think this is a problem. I don't think BTS's actions, well, it's obvious that BTS does inspire a lot of business practices in the industry. Obviously, they're very successful. So a lot of people are promoting in the West right now. A lot of those songs do sound very Western, but I can't really think of a K-pop group who have completely lost themselves to Western styles of music and completely abandoned the style and visual charms that come with K-pop. I can't think of a group who has done that. That being said, I know this whole conversation is unthinkably complex, and there are a lot of moving parts when it comes to talking about the K-pop industry at large. So if you did watch this video and you have an opinion on this, definitely let me know what you think. Do you agree or disagree that this issue isn't a big one? Do you see it in a different way? Yeah, I know it's very subjective, this whole conversation, so I'll be interested to hear what you think if you have anything to add. Yeah, I think that's all from me. Yeah, definitely let me know what you think if you have anything to add. Subscribe if you want to, and yeah, thank you for watching.